Hello and welcome back. This is the video 17 of the Flow Certified Coach training course. Today we're looking at tile 17, which is flow reporting, the dashboards that we use, and room setup. And today we have with us Matt Boone. And he's one of a handful of people who have actually worked with me when we've actually done this. So you actually have an eyewitness here. And I'm going to let Matt introduce himself on this next slide.
Hello, and Andrew, it was a pleasure working with you on those projects. And, you know, as I'm away now from those projects, those things that I thought were just kind of basic elements of what we were doing with our Agile coaching, as I look back now, I see the significance of all the things that we did with the various boards, with the various posters in the room. I don't see those out there in other Agile environments, and I realize that it's really required to reach that level of higher performance, and we kind of knocked it out of the park with a project that we had. But I've been around project management for years, started out implementing computer systems. I've been in healthcare, in clinicals, as well as their IT area. I've been working with data analytics. I'm working with actually even producing some devices for autonomous driving in the automotive industry. So I've had a good broad range view of a lot of different project scenarios, and I am an advocate of agility. I know it works, but it only works, I believe, with flow. And hopefully we can talk a little bit about that in the next slides. And
that's a good segue into the next leadership takeaways.
Well, it's really all about the teams, how we're doing. We have those intrinsic values of individuals, autonomy, mastery, purpose, but that comes together with this team, this Agile team, that we have to measure value. It's no more of these measurements of time studies, of hours per task, of these proxy variables that kind of show maybe how many cards we have processed, or how many days the card was on the Kanban board. Or it's all about what is the value we're trying to deliver, and how do you measure that value to know that you're in touch with what you should be doing for the organization. And I will say that comes from being able to articulate your vision, of knowing why you're doing what you're doing, the purpose of what you're doing, that concise vision statement, measuring the value to meet that vision statement. That's what this, I think, is all going to be about. But let's flip some slides and see what you have here. So at the team level, going back, we had a program of, in one case, it was mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, optical engineers, and we divided actually we showed them all on one Kanban board in a sprint format, and we measured those individual teams in terms of burn up charts. We wanted to show progress, so we were burning up to show progress. Again, sorry to be redundant, but rather than burn down is the only reason I say that. I love moving up rather than, makes more sense for a business, but we showed those, and those were the team only views. We kind of kept management away from those views because it wasn't relative to what typically managers are looking for, because there could be a change in the graph, if you will, just because of the nature of work, of if it needed testing, if it needed procurement, if it needed a skill set that we were dependent on, that we had to face this dependency, or if there just wasn't any cards at that point because we were waiting for mechanical engineers before the electrical engineers could take over. So they were indications for the team only, our burn-up charts. But then we consolidated them together for the product or the program, where I combined them all based on the product's backlog. We could start to estimate how many points. We were using an estimation point back then for our stories, for our epics, The team had decided on a scale that they would use, but based on that, I could then plot how many points, and I knew what the availability bandwidth was for our team in terms of how many points we could actually achieve in a given, in this case, a 2-week sprint.
Yeah.
So based on that, I could graph where we are in terms of the program, how many points we've accumulated, and what our backlog set of where we need to go to complete the program. So that was a good report, I think, for management to kind of show where we were in the program, the portfolio. But we also tied together a program portfolio board that showed our external dependencies, that showed how we moved in terms of everyone that was going to interact with our deliverable, if it was legal, if it was human resources, if it was manufacturing, marketing. We knew all these external dependencies or stakeholders that had certain criteria that had to be met. So at a portfolio or product view, we could bring management in and say, based on how our program is advancing, here are the things that we feel we need to uncover, and make sure we had agreement on that portfolio board showing a lot of our dependencies. So that's how we kind of used the team boards to the organization management boards.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the cross dependencies and integration items, because that's something, and we did it by using strings on the board to make those connections, so that it really was powerful for the product owner and the program manager and the senior stakeholders. We could walk them over to that board and say, well, here's the flow and here's the path. And for the team, I think we only walked the team through. Maybe 1 or 2 people from the team were curious as to what we were doing with that product owner, program manager board. And they asked, well, what's that all about? Because they could see their part, and we had the vision and the mission and the team goals. We should probably go to the next slide. This is just a portfolio example that I think we had Bob walk through. This was just an example of how you can track things over multiple years and do trend lines that you can project off from. And so that becomes really powerful and useful for the executives as they're getting trend lines that they can make decisions with. But these next 2 slides are really the heart and soul of what we did on that project together. And it was really fun to see how you guys actually took all these parts. And so I was just going to let you talk about, you'll notice that we have the VSPT here, we had the task view, we had the program product view, and we didn't emphasize so much project team view, but we used primarily those 2. But go ahead and share how you guys did that, because it was really fun watching how you worked with the team in each of these areas.
One of the aspects that you brought to the table, you and Ted, was simplification. And I think that's principle number 10 of the Agile Manifesto. It's how to
eliminate waste. Yeah.
Well, it's to maximize the amount of work not done.
Exactly.
But when you're talking about that external dependency board, cross dependency board, you were right. We used red yarn to tie sticky notes together. You simplified it. That project was tens of millions of dollars that management was looking at red yarn and Post-it notes, and it told the story within minutes of the status of this whole portfolio. Yes. It was beautiful. It was simple. It wasn't all these PowerPoint presentations and narratives and Word documents that probably would have never been read. But if you came to our area and looked at that board, within seconds, you knew exactly where we were.
Yeah.
So and along with that, the red yarn, we led off our teams with, well, if you go back to that slide again, we led off with a training, a workshop of what is agility, what was Scrum, and what was flow, and we captured a lot of those thoughts on these large Post-its.
Yeah.
But we didn't just leave them in the room and toss them. We took these big Post-its and put them up in our co-located Scrum area that
Yeah.
we could constantly focus on. And they would always come up as we co-located with each other, worked with each other, that we could go talk about the aha moment. We're struggling. We're going through the process. Oh, now we see the significance. And then we go up to a higher performance, or what our vision was, what our mission statement was, what our goal. They were all in front of us. Cascaded vision. What is the significance of cascaded vision? What does leadership want? What does the individual want? How do we cascade that vision up each level to tie into making sure that we're in sync, that we knew what our purpose was? They were great reminders, very simplistic in nature, but our room was set up this way where we had these posters along with our product backlog, of course, and along with our Kanban board, but it brought focus, and it also, I think, brought engagement, that we're all on the same page, we all knew the purpose, and we actually were excited. In fact, one of the teams that you and I led, in a survey, they said the highlight of their day was to come to Scrum.
Yeah, exactly. That it was like almost a sanctuary for them from their daily work, where they could just come in, focus, and deliver. And it was really fun to watch. And I love it that you brought up all the posters or the flip charts that we had, the big size flip charts that were Post-it notes with all of the different models and tools and simplistic ways to communicate. Because people who didn't go through the training, it was fun to watch them walk into our room. They would just walk in and they would go, "What on earth?" And they would look at the backlog with all the Post-it notes, and then they would look at all the training materials, and then they would look at the sprint Kanban board, and then they'd look at the product owner. I mean, we covered huge amounts of wall space, but like you said, it told the story in 2 minutes. I watched you walk senior executives through the entire project in 5 minutes, and they would walk out and they would be going, "What did I just see? That was amazing." And didn't one of them actually say, "We need to use this everywhere"? Do you remember that? I forget who it was.
We had a lot of demonstrations come through the room because that project really exceeded management expectations. We did about 2 years worth of work in 3 months, and that was all agreed upon by the team. But people started to take note, how are they pulling this off? And really, it was that visualization of work. Agility, to me, is visualizing the work in a very intuitive nature, that within minutes you could see the significance or the status of the project, who's doing what are the bottlenecks, how do we move forward. And you mentioned management came and looked at all the posters, but within minutes, they knew exactly the status of that. And the rest of the organization at that time was very traditional in nature. They sat in cubicles, they sat in different floors, they didn't talk until they went to meetings. And then at the end of the meeting, they might summarize with, "We need another meeting to make sure we all agree that this meeting was met." It didn't allow the company to seek a higher performance and a condensed deliverable time frame. This room, the way it was set up, provided a lot of focus, provided management with a lot of insight. This particular wall here, when you look at the Kanban board, when you look at the team boards, you look at the burn-up charts, it just was very intuitive to leadership.
Well, and I like it that you brought up the increase that they did 2 years of work in 3 months. What was amazing about that, and to help people understand what we're talking about, this team did 32 product configurations, and we won't tell what product it was, but they did 32 product configurations. And we asked the senior leadership, "How many would you expect?" in a normal situation, and I'm sure you remember the number, and I'll let you share that. How many did they expect to get?
I think they expected about five,
Yep, exactly.
and
Five or six.
five in those, yeah. And we had done the 32, and I really challenged the team because I thought it was a little far-fetched. It wasn't reality. But when they explained how productive they had become with this agile concept,
Yep.
it really made sense. And that's
Yeah.
why I think it would go along to the rest of the firm. But it's very hard to change. And a lot of people felt that it was apples and oranges. There was a defensive posture that started to
Yeah.
take place
Yeah.
because the traditional management felt comfortable in achieving that in 2 years that we achieved in 3 months.
Yeah.
And if anything of a lesson learned that I learned is you have to be sensitive in terms of how something that significant is communicated to the management team.
Exactly. Well, in the management, they said, well, we would never let a project go for 2 years to get that many configurations. We don't have time. We would have only done what we could do in those 3 months. And so, but they had to acknowledge that, yes, the team did deliver 32, which was a six-fold increase. Basically, that team did a couple $1 million worth of work. Instead of over 2 years, they condensed it down into 3 months. And that's like a 600% increase in productivity. And you were the one that asked the question of the team, and it was just beautiful when they came back, because my head snapped. I'm going, that's the winner. That's the extra value that this team has already delivered in the first 90 days. And that really did blow the executive's mind. And I love it you bring up the defensive part, because actually I'm sure they never verbalized it, but they were thinking in their heads was something along the lines of, oh my goodness, this team just outperformed anything we've ever seen. Now they're going to expect us to do this every time. And I'm like going, oh yeah.
It was an eye-opening experience that, again, in hindsight, I wish we could have really spoken about how we're going to communicate those awesome expectations to leadership. They were sitting at the table, though, during our product reviews, and I remember their eyes kind of coming out of their head when they said, how are you reaching that many decisions? How are you able to pull that off? Is this agile? They didn't know.
Yeah, they were like,
But that team, by the way, Andrew, we were kind of pricey, if you will, as consultants. But that team that we were running was salary-wise about $100,000 a month that the individuals were making, and we saved about 21 months. We did 2 years worth of work in 3 months, saving about 21 months, or times 100,000 a month. We saved 2.1 millions roughly in just OpEx. So in terms of our value, I'm not sure we charged enough.
well, remember in the front of Flow, Ted talks about
Yeah.
wishing that we could charge based on the value we deliver. That's absolutely correct.
Let alone what the product deliverable that we achieved was in the neighborhood of tens of millions of dollars in savings on top of the 2.1 million.
The goal was to save about $3 per unit, and we had hit $2.67 or something like that when we were finished with the assignment, which meant just on the first year's production they were going to save $27 million,
because we had sold 9 million units. Times that that adds up at 9 million units.
It becomes real money really fast. No, that's excellent.
Well, it was all done with these posters that you mentioned on the board, these simplistic posters with red yarn tying these Post-it notes together. The team was so engaged. They loved coming. They knew what their purpose was. They had autonomy. They made their own decisions. They were allowed to master those configurations and really think what it was that they believed, not what they were being told to do, but what did they believe, and they went out and did it.
Yeah. And I love how you use those huge post-it flip charts during the retrospectives, because you would use different things to every retrospective was a little different. I just loved how you made it different and interesting for the teams, so that they were like going, hey, what are we doing for retrospective this time? And it was really fun to watch. And so, because over time they could really see, oh, we're actually delivering some really good stuff here. And it was just absolutely marvelous to watch you and the team, and all of the value that you guys were able to deliver. It was just like, for me as the senior coach, I'm just like going, woo, 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 this is awesome.
We kind of transformed the word work into fun and achieved 600% of expectations.
Yeah. And the first 90 days with a team that had never done Agile. and with a team where they had very low expectations of the team being able to deliver anything. They never told us that directly in the beginning. They only shared that when the assignment was done.
I still have a hard time believing that, because those people were excellent. They were awesome.
Excellent. You just
People,
have to.
They were negative at first, a couple of them, in terms of they just didn't think it was possible. However, as we progressed, and it wasn't that long, within weeks, all of a sudden.
Yeah. And what was fun was, over time, even the negative ones were going, oh my goodness, look at what we just did. It blew their mind. And when that happened, then they came with on the journey, because they're going, this is great. So it just shows over and over again, you don't have to have everybody with, and you don't even have to have maybe necessarily the superstars on your team, and still be able to deliver remarkable results where the executives just go, what was that? You know, it really snaps their head, and it really made an impact on the organization.
They saw the progress in the reviews, but again, with what we just spoke about, the reports, there are distinctions between team reports and portfolio reports.
Exactly.
Management does not, you don't want to ever direct management at the team reports. That is meaningless for management.
Exactly.
And there were some discussions that took place that spoke about productivity measures based on the team reports. And that those conversations really shouldn't have ever taken place. But it wasn't how you quantify how the team was progressing. That was more on the management reports, those boards that show the progress of the portfolio, the program, not the team board. So that to keep in mind too, with so many reports on the walls.
Well, once again, Matt, thanks for being with today. It was an honor and a pleasure to be able to work with you and coach the team with you, and watch all of you guys come up the curve so quickly. And
I'm gonna grab my book, though. You guys, this flow book, you and Ted, you have taken agility and basically any project management methodology to a whole new level.
Exactly.
Strongly recommend this book.
Thanks, Matt. Well, thanks again, and we look forward to having you with again in another video. So keep up the great work. Thanks, Matt.